Hello, welcome to Learn to Burn. Pyrography for beginners. So I'm teaching as a beginner because I am a beginner. I have done a little bit of dabbling into wood burning and I find it very fun, very soothing. I actually, when I have time, like to sit down and to just burn whenever I get time to in the shop. And it relaxes me, it calms me down, and it just allows me to just kind of have fun, if you will. But pyrography isn't hard. It isn't hard at all. The hard part about it for us is taking something that we're trying to burn and burning it on a round object. When you first start pyrography, you have to get a burner. And then the one that I started with was supposed to be $100. It's the one that Hobby Lobby sells. They had it on sale. I think I paid like $50 or $60 for it. And I brought that home and I used it probably for the first 3 or 4 burns that I had. And then it just quit on me. And it was like, so I started looking into ones that were going to hold up better, had dual tips, because working with just one of these and not being able to immediately switch to a different tip and wait for it to cool down before you could change it delays the time, right? So I wanted to get one that had 2 on it so I could flip between tips, and while one was cooled off I could switch the tip and just speed up the process. I don't have a fancy one. I bought one off of Amazon. It's called Tech Chick, TEKCHIC, and it has a temperature control. Well, it's not a temperature control, it's voltage, okay? More power, darker burn, right? And I got that off Amazon. It wasn't over $100, I can tell you that, because I'm a big fan of not dumping a whole bunch of money into something if I'm not going to consistently use it all the time. So for beginners, you got to have that tool, and it's a good idea to practice flat, and that's what we're going to be discussing and doing tonight. Now, I did put an image of a lighthouse out, so if anybody had a burner and wanted to go through with it at the same time that I was, you could. It is not a overly complicated pattern, but it's definitely not something that I would say start with immediately. I pulled it into use so I could try to show you some different shading techniques tonight. Burning flat is so much easier. You can get a lot more detail in it because you're not having to do all the round and go around the corner and you're blind sometimes, but we'll get to that in the next video. But you got to pick a design or hand draw a design on wood. And the wood pieces that I use are the wood slices that come from Hobby Lobby. You can order cheaper ones, but the best wood that I like to use with is the basswood. And when you get it, you want to choose a side that looks good because it's slices of wood, so you've got little knots and stuff in it, little blemishes in the wood. And always take like 240 and just sand it down just a little bit just to get rid of the rest of the fibers and stuff. Basswood is really good to burn on because it's easy to burn. It takes the burn really well, and you don't have so much of these ups and downs on the wood where it like ripples into the wood grain and stuff. Other woods, you're gonna have harder spots and softer spots in it, so the basswood stuff's a lot easier to burn. And you can order it on Amazon as well and get a lot of quantities of these in different sizes. Coasters are another thing. There's a whole bunch of different pieces that you could practice on. So once you get your burner and you get your wood that you're gonna do, the other thing that we have to do is figure out how are we gonna transfer the design to the wood. Now, you guys been along the journey with me trying to figure out how to get it to cork. So much easier on wood. You get these graphite paper, and I got a whole package of it, but it looks like this. All right, you've got one side that is a little bit darker, and then you've got a matte side. And set it down on your object, and then put your image over top of it, tape it to it, and then you just retrace everything. And what it does is immediately puts it straight to the wood. So when you pull it off, you have a very clean, easily to follow design. And that's one of the reasons why I hate that I can't use the graphite paper on cork, because it's so easy and the graphite paper is so cheap. That pack that I have, I grabbed it at Hobby Lobby. It was $4, and there's 20 sheets in here that are this size. This is the pack. And then practice. Just sit down and just try some stuff. I've got a couple of pieces that I have done, mainly sugar skulls and some artistic kind of, I don't know, the other one that I did was the mixed media stuff, and it was my girl that I decided to paint because I was testing out that trash polka stuff. But what I like to do when I'm doing these pieces is I use both sides. Now, obviously, if you're doing it for yourself to display, you don't want to put it on both sides. But this side of this piece of wood, and I'll show you, has a lot of blemishes in it. And there's even some holes, like these are legit holes that are in the wood. I don't know what happened to it, but because it is a test piece just for fun, I didn't care that it had holes. I was like, it'll be fine. I didn't want to do the whole project on the camera because I didn't want you guys to be bored while I'm sitting here burning all of these lines. So the graphite paper is here. So everything else has been burned, but this piece right here in particular is what the graphite does when it transfers on there. You can see from looking at some of my lines, straight lines I suck at. So I just know to really try to straighten it up as I'm burning because it's just one of those things. The biggest thing is to start with the lightest burn. You don't want to go dark super fast because if you do it light enough and you make a mistake, you can sand it back off. That's one of the great things about burning, as long as you do it light enough. If you go straight in, you got your thing super hot and you go and just start burning and charring and you got fire and smoke and all this other stuff, you're not gonna be able to sand that out. So if you make a mistake, you can't fix it. You're just gonna have to either blend it into the rest of the background or you'll have to start over, one of the two. And that's one of the reasons why you want to practice on flat pieces, because you need to practice what temperature you like to burn at, how to do the shading, and there's so many different things. And like I said before, I'm not a professional, very beginner, but I have fun with it and I enjoy it. And if you are interested in doing it, you definitely should give it a try. Once you figure all that stuff out, you need to work slowly. You really just want to take your time. You also don't have to do the entire line whenever you go to burn it. So you can stop midway through, pick it up, do it again, and just keep following that line. Just make sure you keep the same consistency and be very careful when that point comes back down, because now it's had a rest and when you picked it up, so it's going to be a little bit hotter than whenever it was on the wood itself. So it can go and burn into it again and make this little divot in that spot. And then for the shading, I have watched countless videos of different techniques to do shading. I have a couple of different ones that I particularly do, and that's mainly it because that's all I've had time to experiment with. If you want to look more into that, all you have to do is look up like shading techniques for pyrography on YouTube, and you're going to come up with hundreds of videos from people that are a lot better at it than I am. You also need to clean these little nibs. So as you burn, you're going to be picking up carbon on the tips of these, and my set comes with little holders, and it has this little, it's a wet sponge, so you just add water to it, and then when you go to store it, you just let this air dry. It dries out. You can put it in storage. You don't have to worry about mold or anything. And this little thing is made so that when this gets hot, you can take the tip and just drag it across there, and it gets all that excess buildup off of it, and then it resets it. If you don't have something like that, you can also use those green scrubby scour pads to do the same thing as well, just to pull the excess carbon off of it. You want to do that pretty regularly, especially when you start to notice like it'll start burning a little bit lighter. Clean it. Once you get done, like let's say that you were doing artwork on this flat piece, you do want to try to seal it. Cork is a little bit different. You don't technically have to seal the burn if you're just burning it. If you're adding color, you do want to seal it, but the burn technically doesn't have to. But adding those oils or, true oil or any of the lacquers or whatever you want to put over the grip will actually bring out the burn a little bit and make it more pretty, if you will. I was commissioned last year on a wooden slab to do a helicopter, and I put the true oil on it, and that thing came out so gorgeous. It looked even better after the seal was on it. So that's something to consider too. And then basically it's just enjoy the process. So without any further ado, let's actually get to playing around with this design. All right. So like I said, I chose the lighthouse and I started doing some shading so I started doing some dark spots because this is what we're doing. All right. This is the big picture. Now, one other thing I do want to mention. So I cut this piece of carbon paper to be a lot bigger than my wood slice, because I don't want it to be exact. I want to be able to have a little bit of extra just for taping purposes. And then on this particular one, all I had to do is just put tape here and then tape it around the edges of this to hold it in place. You can go back over this with any kind of pencil or pen that you want to. I chose, I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's a pink pen. And that was so I could make sure that I got all of these little lines and details and stuff, and I knew what I did trace and what I didn't trace. You also want to periodically pick this up and make sure it's transferring, and the biggest thing is don't let it move. So I only taped two sides so I could flip it up this way and flip it down to make sure I got everything. Once this is transferred on there, then we have just the plain Jane design. My kit came with a whole bunch of these little nibs, is what they're called, and I haven't used half of them yet. And they all have different purposes. And this one in particular is kind of, I've used this one. That has a tiny little ballpoint on it. This is really good for lines and letters if you want to use this one. I have used this one before. It's not my personal favorite, but it's a good one to use. Ones that look like this, that kind of have a spoon effect to it. These are shaders. So they're lifted. And so as you push down and drag it out, it burns darker where you touch it, and then it fades out as it goes. I like those. I have used basically all the sizes of that. I have used this one too. This is another sharp kind of line thing. I don't know all the names to them. And I mean, there's so many of these, and I couldn't tell you what they're all used for, but they all have different purposes. All I can tell you is that I use these shaders a good bit, and I use the lines when I'm trying to get really fine lines. I use these ballpoint ones a pretty good bit. Most of your kits are going to explain to you what the tips do. And then I have 2 in my burners currently. So this one comes with a bunch to play around with. And the only thing I don't like is the case, because if they're not laying just right, you can't get it to close. All right, so back to this. So we've been talking about all the lines and stuff and how to do them. Even though this is technically a shader, I watch a couple people on TikTok and YouTube, and they use this for lines. And I've been using this one for lines. And I love this one for lines. And that's actually what I did this entire piece with. Even the shading is done with the same one. But with this tool, my machine, the volts on it are set to 58 currently. So it's a little over halfway on the voltage that's able to be done on it. And I'm going to show you. These have been sitting warmed up since I got the video set up. So they're pretty hot. That's the other thing. Make sure you don't ever get your fingers past your tool, because everything down here will burn you. And it's even a good idea to use those gloves, those heat resistant gloves. I just don't like how they feel. So I have to take breaks to keep my hand from getting too hot. But I like to take the side of this tool, and it's going to smoke, and do that. Now, that's a darker burn, but this tip is super, super hot. The more that I use it, the cooler it's gonna get. Now, I personally like a darker defined line, all right? But when you first do this, you need to do a very light line so that you don't burn a hole through it, because I'll show you, because like I said, this is practice piece. If you touch that thing too long, you have put a hole in your project. See my hole? It's real fun to sit here and watch it burn and it smoke, and it smells amazing, but don't do that. And as it cools off, and you can, if this is another thing too, is as long as you're not putting as much pressure on the nib, then it's not going to burn as dark. And you see, I lightened up my pressure so it's not going as dark. When drawing, say, lines, is it a slow process to get the burn correct? Not when you start cooler, Greg. If I was to turn the machine down, let's say I'm at 58 now, I'm going to drop it to where it says 30 volts and give it just a second so it cools off. And I'm actually just going to use the wet sponge, wipe it off to get it to cool down faster. And I'm going to show you the difference in the two. So we've given it a few minutes to cool off. See how I've turned it down to 30 and it's not burning at all? So that's too cold. Put it on 42 and give it a second. And this is where you're going to be fine tuning it. Because I will say, if you're doing this on cork, even that 30 is too hot for cork. Cork is way softer, so it burns a lot darker, deeper, quicker. So let's try that line again. That's where you should be starting. See the difference? Because if you made a mistake at this point and you screwed up, then you could take your sandpaper and get rid of that burn line. And it's always a better idea to go back over it and do it a couple times than it is to go straight into this poof, super dark. All right. So we'll run with what you should be doing and not what Mary does. And you just literally just trace your lines again. I always have my picture around for reference just to make sure I know what that line is doing and I can look at it. And if it gets to be too light, then you just come back with it again and burn over it. Now, you may not even like this particular tip for what I do. You may like that ballpoint tip a little bit better. And that tip is made to do this. I just watched a bunch of people that use this one and have gotten used to using this one. And I like it because it has like a straight edge. So it's easier to follow the lines, in my opinion. Yeah, if you got it too hot, it's gonna burn right. It's gonna just whoosh, and you're gonna lose it real quick. If you've got it about this temperature where it's burning, but it's not, it's not smoking, it's not trying to punch a hole through it, you don't see fire, because I've experienced all that. It smells amazing, not great for your project, then it's not too bad. It's just like retracing your pattern again. It is, Diane. I thoroughly enjoy burning. I was actually happy that somebody suggested that we do this as a topic, because it is fun. And we just continue to just keep tracing our lines. The faster you drag it across it as well, when it's on a lower temperature, the less likely it is to burn the line. And so that's one of the reasons why it's suggested to go back over it multiple times at a lower temperature than do it in one swipe on a hot. But with practice, you'll figure out where your happy spot is. Let's see if we can get that line. That line was all jacked up when I traced it. That was cute, Mary. And if you don't burn directly on your line, that's okay too. Especially in this one, because I know that that traced really off. And you can see, this is one of the reasons why I like to burn a little bit hotter, is because I like to move a little bit faster. And I'm going to crank it back up again, because I don't remember where I said it was. I think I said 58. I like to move fast to get this here, because I enjoy doing the shading and stuff a little bit more. I'm just going to do a couple more of these lines. I'm not going to finish this whole piece up here, because I'm actually kind of slow when it comes to doing this. And then I'm going to show you some of the stuff I would do for shading. Let that heat up a little bit. That's another thing, see, where I told you if you touch it down, it tries to burn it. So you have to be really careful with your movements when you get it too hot. And I always will thicken up that line, but I know based off my pattern that this is the line that I'm working on right now. So that little divot is actually going to be put into a shaded section. So it's going to be okay. This one, if I remember correctly, was like 75, the one that I'm using. It came with the 2 burners, the holders, all the nibs, and there was something else it came with. I can't remember what else it came with. A little ratchet so that you can, or a little wrench so that you can change the tips. But it was a good deal. And it was on Amazon. And this one in particular, TEKCHIC, so Tech Chick. It's not top of the line. It's not the best of the best, because, I'm not doing this for a living, burning stuff. So I don't need the razor. You'll hear people throw that around, that's the best burner. It is the best burner, but it's very expensive. And I ain't got that kind of money to throw down on something I only use a handful of times. So just get on Amazon and price check, just check the prices and see what's available. I don't know if this machine's still available or not, because I haven't looked for one lately. And it seems that some of the stuff that I had been using in the past has stopped making it. All right, this little triangle is this guy. Okay, let me burn that. I missed a line when I drew that. You can see whenever I traced it, I forgot to trace the top side of it. I just got the inside and I forgot the top. So now I gotta freelance it. And that goes all the way up to here. And down just a little. Okay. Oh, good. All right, now that section's completely black. So let me show you just a little bit of this tip. Remember, this is a shader. Its job, let me show you down here in a big section before I do that, because all this down here is actually black. When it's super hot and you put it down, it's going to burn flat, and as you drag it out, it lightens up. Okay, now if this was at a lower temperature, obviously it's not going to be this dark and go out and take as long. It's going to go lighter, So I'm going to turn it back down to 43. I'm going to wipe off the carbon because it builds up pretty quick on that. Let it cool off. So I went from 58 volts to 43 volts. And now you see the difference in the burn. It's ridiculous, right? I'm going from the different ones. And the quicker you use it, like if you were going across here, I don't get any kind of anything, right? But as I leave it on this setting, I do want to show you. So there's some sections in this that require it to have lighter shading. Especially here. Let's focus on this one. This is shaded, but ever so lightly, which falls right here. So we just want to put a tiny bit of color here. And what I like to do is just kind of pretend that this is a marker and just kind of drag it across there. Now, I'm barely doing anything to it, but that's okay because that's a very light shade. The slower I move, the more it's going to burn. This is why it's so important to do this flat, because then you're going to get to figure out all the different things, little tricks and techniques, and see what voltage you like to work on, and see what settings that you need it on for it to get a little bit darker. And as we continue to keep adding and stacking the burn on top of itself, we start to pick up just a little bit of color. Now, it's inconsistent. This section's a little bit... Eek! I got too close. Yeah, that section burned a little bit darker than I wanted to, but that's okay. I can come back with some 240 and just kind of sand that little bit off, and it'll blend it out. And do it in its true nature. There's some, I do know one other shading technique, because I just kind of stick to this one for the most part, because it's the one that I've just used for mainly all of that. I'm going to turn this back up so it's really hot. The other one that some people do adds texture. It's called a crosshatch. And you probably understand what that is where you make a bunch of lines. Go slower. And then we come back and make lines to make X's. Obviously, I don't do this technique very often. You would probably see this for us, like if we were doing a fish, this would be a good technique to kind of create the scales on that. Oh, great question, Diane. Hold on one second, because I'm going to add something else to your list that you need to buy. Enter detail sanders. I use these a lot. Not just on this kind of stuff, but I use this also on my EVA inlays when I have a piece that I need to get sanded off, but the rest of it is already sanded. So I get this little dude. Comes in a pack of 4. The other one is too far for me to reach it. They're all at different grits, and it comes with replacement sandpaper, and you just move the sandpaper and use this. So if I wanted to take that and get rid of that, these are, I don't know if I said this, Hobby Lobby as well. Now I have control over where it is being sanded in that spot. Now, I did burn it just a little bit too dark, but what's also happening is it's picking up the grain of the wood underneath of it too. So it's almost like there's a little stain on the rings there. So, detail sanders. They're in the hobby kit section. I will show you on the black pieces. This is done with that same technique with using the shader. If you were trying to fix something over here, this is what's going to happen. You're going to be able to take off some of that burn, but because it's so deep, you're going to have to sand to a different height that the outside wood is for it to come off, and you're never going to be able to get the rest of that burn out. That'd be like us trying to burn that hole out that I made earlier, you know, or sand that hole out, because that's into the wood. We'd have to take this thing and sand the whole piece down to fix it. That's okay. I'll blend that out. So I don't know if you guys could see that, the little crosshatch. See how the texture shows up on that? It looks like fish scales. So if you were trying to burn a fish and you needed to add the texture of the fish scales, that little crosshatch, I think that's what they call it, little X's, makes a really good kind of scale technique. Adds texture as well, so you got some highlights and lowlights. That's not quite what I'm after in this piece because I'm trying to black it out, which a torch would be better to do the blacking out, but Mary does not trust herself with fire. This is my second tip. Same shader, but this one's just a little bit bigger than these one. See the size difference? I can get it spot. So I can cover a lot more area with this faster than I can the little one. I use the little one the most for the lines. And what I like about this machine too is it heats up pretty fast. Like I just flipped the switch to turn this one on and it's ready to go. Now because this is so hot, it's burning very fast. That's why you see the smoke. And I just color it. That's how I look at this. You know, if I move faster, it slows down the burn, makes it uneven. But if I keep steady back and forth, it's going to burn it pretty even. If you're noticing it not burning as dark as it has been and you're moving slow, clean your nib. I don't have a ton of control over dragging it as much as I do coloring it. It smells like wood's burning. But like I said, I'm not an expert at this. I am so beginner on this level. And I just have fun with it. You know, most of the stuff that I've been asked to do with burning on grips was the brook trout. And all I did was burn the spots. That one was pretty easy to do. The painting of it was easy. It just took a long time to figure out how to do it. The other one I did was the hands-in grip for Finn. Now, that one was just an emotional roller coaster because, you know, it was a memorial rod. And, you know, that just broke my heart. But the hard part on that was the dang hands. Like, it was awful. But I managed to get it done. Why is that different? That is... Sorry, I'm referencing my picture here. I'm looking at this line going into here. But on my piece, it looks like I didn't get the trace all the way. So that's that piece. And it's supposed to go straight up. So that's another thing. Triple check your pattern that you actually got it completely traced instead of just trusting that you did. Or be good at eyeballing it and fixing it when you go to burn it. Now, the next episode of this, we're going to be burning on cork. Okay? Because I want to show you the difficulties it is of burning on cork. If you keep it pretty simple and straightforward with the design, it's not bad. And it's just a different beast when it comes to using the burner. But we're going to be going on round. And so we're going to be using a very, very simple design because I don't want to make it overly complicated because I'm going to show you how to transfer it to the design. I'm going to show you how to burn it on the design. I'm going to show you how to do all the things. I just turned the thing down because I need to, it's dark here, but it also lightens up. So I want to start dragging it. I want to start doing the actual shading technique. But I got to make sure it's, yeah. So I'm going to figure out a very simple design. We won't be burning this on there. Absolutely not. I did a lighthouse on a cork grip and it wasn't that hard. Okay, now it's too late. No, we're just going to layer it then. Where's that sweet spot? Try 47. Looks great, Mary. Where are you getting your stencils designs? I get on the internet and look up whatever I'm going after. I originally was going to do a fish and I couldn't find a fish that didn't have a stinking too much amount of detail in it to show you guys. So because I was on Pinterest when I was looking, it always shows related photos. And so this lighthouse popped up and I thought, hey, that's got different shading techniques in it. Let's just go with that. But coloring book pictures, you can get that and, you know, you can use that for your outlines and you don't have to worry about shading or anything unless you just want to add the shading yourself. or you can just look for black and white clip art or photos or anything of that nature. But if I can draw it, I try to, but I don't always have time to constantly be drawing my stuff. So I do tend to pull from the internet. Will it burn black on foam at light voltage? I don't know. Stop. I've never tried to burn the foam, actually. I have foam here, and I've never even thought to try to burn it. So this is just going to take me having to add multiple passes on this to get it to the right kind of hue. We're almost there. That's pretty close. That one's a little bit darker. That's pretty close. I'm going to roll with that. But that's the basis of it. It is just pick a pattern, pick a sheet. Coloring pages are great. If you're an artist, draw your own stuff, draw it straight to the wood. They have coasters, they have square coasters, they've got wood slices, they've got straight pieces. If you go to Hobby Lobby, that whole wood aisle that has all the stuff that you can paint and everything, majority of that is basswood, but that's what you want to get is basswood. It's easier to burn. It doesn't have as many of the ripples. You're not going to deal with hard spots and soft spots where it's going to burn light or burn darker and you haven't changed anything about it. I had some scraps. I don't even know what it was that I was playing around with, and Mark Krause was like, no, no, ma'am. No, ma'am. So I just went straight to the autism grip that I did that had the puzzle pieces that I burned around it. That was very hard trying to get the puzzle pieces to line up on the back. But that center core section was basswood and it worked out really well. So I didn't have any problems with that. But that's the basis of it. Get a good burner. You can start with the cheaper one that is at Hobby Lobby if you want to. Like I said, it worked for about 3 or 4 different burning sessions, different projects, and it just quit. It just quit on me. Then I went and got this one from Amazon, and I've had this one for about 1.5 years now, and I haven't had any issues out of it. And I like this one. Look for something that has a dual tip, so has 2 of these. These are attached to the machine, and there's a switch on it that I can flip from one being on and the other one off and vice versa. And it did come with all those nibs as well. That was the other thing with the machine from Hobby Lobby. I think it came with like 3 or 4 to start with, but it didn't have any of the tips in it that I needed, so I ended up having to spend more money to get some of the extra tips that were around it. But if I remember correctly, that thing's constantly going on sale. So it's a decent beginner, and maybe I had a lemon, who knows, but it's a decent beginner one. But honestly, right off the bat, get something that has a control for the voltage so that you can turn it up and turn it down, because there are some machines where you just turn it on and it is what it is and you can't change it, and you don't want that. You want something where you can control the heat. And get something that has 2 tips. It's going to save you a lot of time when you're switching back and forth between maybe shading or doing outlines and stuff. Or maybe you don't mind to wait because you need a break. That's fine too. But for the price that I got this one for with all the stuff that came with it, it wasn't a bad deal. The next one, I'm going to pick like probably a outline of a fish or something really simple. And then we're going to work with some cork. All right, I'm going to grab a little round piece of cork, and I'm going to show you what happens, the temperature that I had it for the wood versus the cork, so you can see. I have cork that doesn't have holes in it, and I don't use this very often. This is the equivalent to like the extra. All right, this is old stock. For reference, this is where we turned it down, me touching it. All right, black spot. It didn't burn through it, the black spot. Cork. Same amount of time, but the smoke's not great to inhale either. We have a little mini hole already here. If I turned it up to that 58 that I was working on to make the really dark shades down here, for reference, burns through really quick because it's hot, but we touched the cork the same amount of time, and we now have a massive burn with a lot of smoke. So cork has to burn in a lower temp. So I'm going to drop this down to 34 because I don't remember exactly what I burned on. I'm going to get a simple design. We're going to transfer it, and then I'm going to show you how to burn it. And then I'm going to try to share the picture with you guys a day early or a couple days early or something, so you guys can, if you have some cork, you can try it. All right, so I turned it down, touched it. We barely made a mark, right? See how it still burns the cork? So moving from basswood to cork, we have to be super light on the temperature. I'm going to drop it to 25 volts. You can't even see it. It's itty bitty. Now we're getting to a place where this is going to be what you're going to want to burn at. So 26 volts. I need to write that down so I remember it for the next time. But you definitely don't want to be sitting there just burning your cork trying to figure out what temperature it's supposed to be at. I have not burned on composite cork yet, all right? I have not burned on the rubberized cork yet. I've only burned on extra or floor. Pure cork is basically what I've burned on. And most of those burn projects on the cork was with the extra that I got from Steve One, and they did really well. Now, I will say, before we get into the other video, cork typically comes with a lot of pits and stuff that's in it. And when I was talking to Mark about this, everything that Mark Cross does is he's amazing at. So obviously he's already done the wood burning on cork and put masterpieces on these things, right? I was talking to him about it, and he said, you need to fill all the pits with the cork filler. So I made cork dust, mixed it with the Titebond 3, covered all the pits, sanded it back down. But apparently on one of the grips that I did do that on, I didn't get all the filler sanded all the way off. It was smooth. You couldn't feel it, and you didn't see it. There was no color difference between the actual cork and the other, but when I went to burn, the heat activated that, and it turned it a yellow tinge in that area. And I was like, so I stopped putting filler in the cork and just burned it with the edges and everything. Now, it's a little aggravating, and you'll see that when we actually go to do it, because then you might have a divot where that's where one of your lines has got to get burned into. But for me, cork, unless you're getting it fully painted like some people have gotten it, it comes with pits. That's just what it looks like, you know? So speaking from experience in those trial, that one time that it happened, I would prefer to not have to put the cork filler in and just work around or work with the natural curves and divots and holes that are in the cork itself. That's just me personally. I will be doing myself no justice if I don't tell you guys, and you may have seen it on the initial start. I have a discount code with Mudhole. I am terrible about telling people about it unless I'm on the podcast, Decorate It. But you can get 10% off at mudhole.com on MHX, CRB, Pro Products, Gaho Reel Seats, and also American Tackle using Mary10, MARY10. That gets you 10% off all that stuff. So use the discount code, save you some money. Appreciate Mudhole for giving me that so I can give back to you guys. If you need anything, save some money. Never could keep filler in the pits. Like, I could get it in there, it would stay, but you also get this kind of, I don't know, it just looks different. So I just enjoy the cork for what it is and just leave it with the pits because it's pitted. That's kind of one of the personalities of cork, in my opinion. But yeah, that one where I burned it, it was the hands in, because I still have the original grip, and it has a yellow tinge to where some of the sections where it just didn't get sanded down 100%, and it was like, ugh. You know, because now I've got this yellow tinge in the middle of a hand. Like, it was right at one of his knuckles, and it looked awful. It was horrible. I ended up redoing that grip, one, for that, and two, because I put a weird bone in the wrist whenever I was doing it, and it looked like the wrist was broken, and one of the fingers was distorted, and I was just like, I can't send that out, so I redid it. I'm going to keep working on this when I get a chance to. I can't guarantee it's going to get finished anytime soon because I've got a bunch of stuff that I've got to do, but this will be my downtime, fun time, play around, enjoy the wood burning process, and decompress from the day. It is very relaxing. I will say putting it on a grip is relaxing as long as you don't have a taper in that section. The full wells that I did that had the puzzle pieces on it, that one was not fun because I had to getting the stencil on there to get the puzzle pieces traced on that thing with the curve of the fool's well. Oh, it was awful. So I just stopped. I was just like, I ended up having to cut it and then piece it back together, and then I had to freehand a whole bunch of stuff. So it was just like, I should have just drew it and just been done with it. Like I said, that autism puzzle piece one that I did, the section in the middle was basswood. and it's lighter wood, so it's not a heavy wood that's going to make your, you know, grip really dense. And I paired it with an ebony, I don't remember the exact name of it, but it was very poisonous. Always research your woods and what you have to wear respirator wise whenever working with it, because that one, it would make you feel like you had the flu even if you had just cut it and stopped. Wes was cutting it and forgot to put his respirator on, and he started to feel sick, and we had to open the doors, and I sent him back in the house, and it was a whole ordeal. So research the woods. And I also mixed G10 into that. I'm going to plan for 2 weeks from now to do the follow-up. That way I have enough time to get projects here caught up and then get a section of a cork put together. I believe I started the sentence and then stopped. The pre-made cork grips are going to work fine too. You're going to be able to burn on those. So you don't even have to like get raw cork and assemble it and burn it and all this other stuff. You can just use the pre-made. Those are going to burn just fine too. I had some previous pieces from years ago here that had snapped or whatever reason, and just was practicing on it just to play around with what was too dark, what was too light, and that did really well as well. So if you don't want to have to go buy the actual cork, those pre-made grips will work too. I'm going to head out. Thanks for hanging out with me. Hopefully it invigorated you to try something else. If nothing else, maybe I gave you an idea to sit down, relax, and chill at the end of the day, or decompress from some stuff. Like I said, I enjoy doing it on flat. I have a lot of fun doing it. You don't rush this one. You just sit and let it burn. It's like watching a fire. You don't rush the process. But if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you know how to reach me. On that note, we will chat in a couple weeks on the live video, and y'all have a great night. Bye.